The scraping sound didn't make sense at first. It was sharp, metallic, and completely out of place in the quiet of my home. At 2 in the morning, the world is supposed to be still. Even the streetlights outside seem to dim as if they know people should be sleeping. But that sound, steady, angry, dragging across the floor, pulled me out of a half-dream and into a rising panic. I lay there for a moment, trying to convince myself it was something normal. Maybe a shovel falling over. Maybe a loose shelf collapsing. Maybe the wind. But then it came again. Scrappy. Clink. Like someone prying something open. My heart started pounding too hard to ignore. I swung my legs out of bed, grabbed my phone, and walked through the dark hallway toward the garage door. Every step felt heavier, like the house itself was warning me to stop, turn back, pretend I heard nothing. But curiosity and fear pushed me forward. Before opening the door, I hesitated. I listened. Someone was breathing on the other side. Not softly, not calmly, short huffs of frustration, like they were struggling with something. My fingers tightened around the doorknob. I hit the light switch. Bright light spilled across the garage, and everything inside my brain went blank for a second. Standing in my garage, was Linda Harris, the woman who ran our HOA like it was a military base. She was still in her neat blouse and cardigan, but she looked wild without her usual makeup or composure. And in her hand was a crowbar. Not a small one. A heavy, rusted one she must have yanked out of some forgotten shed. She wasn't startled by the light or by me. She didn't even look guilty. Instead, she was mid-sentence, yelling into her phone. "Yes, I'm telling you," she snapped, pacing in front of my car. "He stole my SUV. I'm inside his garage right now." I stood frozen. My mouth opened, but no words came out. Finally, the only thing I could think to say burst out. "What the hell are you doing in here?" Linda didn't even flinch. She turned her head slowly, like she was annoyed I'd interrupted her dramatic performance. She pointed the crowbar straight at me. "Oh, look who finally showed up," she said. "Trying to hide your little theft." I blinked. "Hard. My theft." I repeated. "That's my car," she declared, jabbing the crowbar toward my SUV. "My brand new model. You stole it. I'm performing a citizen's recovery. Step aside." She actually tried to walk past me toward the driver's door. I stepped in front of her. "Linda, that's my car. My name is literally on the registration and the plate frame." She rolled her eyes with a dramatic scoff, like I was an inconvenience rather than a homeowner finding someone breaking in at 2 a.m. "I know what I bought," she snapped. "The dealership must have given you my VIN by mistake. Or you cloned it. Or you hacked the system. Criminals do that all the time." "Hack the system." I repeated, baffled. "Linda, I don't even know how to fix my Wi-Fi." She ignored that. She ignored everything. Instead, she put her phone back to her. "Yes, officer, he's here now," she said, voice suddenly trembling like she was a victim. "I'm scared for my life. Please hurry." I stared at her, heat rising in my chest. Not just anger, disbelief. She had broken into my property, tried to pry open my car, and was now calling the cops on me? My hand shook as I raised my phone. "This is going on video." "Go ahead," she shouted. "Record your own crime." "If anyone's committing a crime here, it's you," I said, forcing my voice to stay steady. "You broke into my home." "I entered the premises in pursuit of stolen property," she snapped back. "It's completely legal." "It's absolutely not." She didn't care. She paced around the car like a detective in some cheap TV show, waving her crowbar at imaginary clues. Everything about the moment felt surreal. The cold concrete under my feet, the harsh brightness of the overhead light, the shaking weight of adrenaline in my chest, none of it matched the ridiculousness of what I was seeing. But one thought kept repeating in my head. If she's willing to do this, what else is she capable of? Then, in the distance, I heard sirens. For the first time, Linda smiled, and the way she looked at me, smug, victorious, told me she really believed she'd win. But I knew something she didn't. The security camera above the garage door had captured every second of her breaking in. The truth was on my side, and soon Everyone would see it. The police arrived faster than I expected. Their lights washed across my driveway in streaks of red and blue, bouncing off my windows and painting the garage in sharp flashes of color. For a moment, it didn't feel like my home anymore. It felt like a crime scene. And Linda acted like the star of her own dramatic courtroom movie. The moment the officers stepped out of their cruiser, she ran toward them, waving her arms like she was flagging down a helicopter. "Officers! Officers! Thank God you're here!" she cried, pointing both hands at me like she was identifying a fugitive. "That man stole my car." I stood there, leaning against the doorway, exhausted and angry. My heart still beat too fast, and I was struggling to keep my breathing even. I didn't want to come off as hostile or emotional. I knew how situations like this could go wrong quickly. One of the officers, a tall guy with a tired face, approached me. "So, can we talk to you for a second?" "Of course," I said, lifting my hands in a calm, open gesture. She broke into my garage. "That's my car. I have the registration in the glove box and security footage showing her forcing her way in." Linda gasped dramatically. "Footage? Oh, please. He probably edited it." The officers exchanged a look. I could see the doubt forming, not toward me, but toward her. They motioned for both of us to step apart. One officer walked with Linda to the edge of the driveway, while the other stayed with me under the harsh garage light. "Start from the beginning," he said. I told him everything, waking up to scraping, turning on the light, finding her with a crowbar, and hearing her shouting on the phone about a stolen car that wasn't Hayes. The officer listened quietly, nodding here and there. "Do you have the video?" he asked. I pulled up the camera feed on my phone. The footage was clear, crystal clear. It showed Linda walking up with her crowbar, looking over her shoulder nervously, then pushing open my side door and slipping inside. The officer watched the clip twice, then let out a slow breath. "All right," he said. "That helps." Meanwhile, Linda was still ranting loudly behind us. "He's manipulating you. I know that's my car. I bought the same model 2 weeks ago. The dealership must have given him the wrong one, or he stole it directly off the lot. Why aren't you listening to me?" The second officer tried to calm her down, but she was spiraling. Her voice cracked, frustrated and furious, like she couldn't understand why the world wasn't bending to her version of reality. The officer in front of me nodded toward the SUV. "Mind showing me the registration?" "Sure." I opened the driver's door, keeping my movement slow and visible. I retrieved the envelope from the glove box and handed it over. He studied it under the garage light. "Name matches your ID," he said. "VIN matches a car." He walked to his partner and showed him the paperwork. They exchanged a short conversation I couldn't hear, then both looked at me again with something like sympathy. Linda noticed a shift immediately. Her voice went sharp. "What are you whispering about? Did he bribe you?" The first officer said firmly, "This vehicle is registered to him." "That's impossible," she snapped, eyes bulging. "Check again. He forged it. He swapped the numbers." The VIN on the registration matches the VIN on the vehicle." "No," she shrieked. "No, you're wrong. You're all wrong." The officers had reached the limit of their patience. One held up his hand to stop her pacing. "We have video evidence of you forcing entry into his garage. You cannot enter someone's property without permission, even if you believe something inside belongs to you." "I know it does," she screamed. I stepped back, letting the officers handle her. At this point, the adrenaline had burned off, leaving behind a dull, heavy exhaustion. I'd expected her to deny everything. I didn't expect her to unravel like this. The officer said again, slower, "We need you to come with us so we can sort this out." Linda froze. For a split second, I saw something I hadn't seen all night. Fear. Real fear. It flickered across her face before she masked it with defiance. "This is harassment," she whispered. "I am the HOA president." "That doesn't change the law," the officer replied. They guided her to the patrol car, not handcuffed, but firmly. She kept twisting around to glare at me, eyes full of blame, not remorse. As the car door closed behind her, the garage suddenly felt too quiet. The flashing lights faded. The officers gave me instructions about filing a report and then left, their cruiser rolling down the street until the night swallowed it. I stood alone under the buzzing garage light, staring at the crowbar she'd dropped on the floor. It wasn't over. Not even close. Because if Linda was willing to break into my home and call the cops on me, then she was willing to do a lot worse. The morning after the police took Linda away felt strangely quiet, like the whole neighborhood was holding its breath. I barely slept that night, replaying everything in my head. Her breaking in, the argument, the officers trying to reason with her. Even with the adrenaline gone, my stomach stayed knotted. I kept thinking, surely everyone will understand now. Surely this is enough. I was wrong. By 9 a.m., I stepped outside to grab a mail and immediately noticed something taped to nearly every door on the street. White flyers with the HOA's blue seal at the top. A community alert. My heart sank before I even read it. When I unfolded the paper, the words hit like a slap. An incident occurred last night involving a homeowner and an HOA officer. We urge residents to remain calm and avoid hostile confrontations with HOA staff performing their duties. No mention of Linda breaking and entering. No mention of her false police report. No mention of the crowbar or the footage or the fact that the officers had escorted her away, not me. Instead, it made it sound like I had been the problem. I stood there on the sidewalk, the morning sun warming my face while a cold anger spread through the rest of me. It wasn't just unfair, it was a deliberate twist of the truth. Damage control. Image protection. They were trying to shield their president and redirect the blame onto me. As I walked back inside, a neighbor across the street glanced at me, then quickly looked away. Another neighbor, someone who used to wave every morning, just stared for a long moment and shut their blinds. A pair of joggers ran past whispering, stealing glances over their shoulders. It hit me. I was already being judged. Not because of what happened, but because of what people thought happened. The HOA had crafted their narrative before I had a chance to share mine. By mid-afternoon, a thick envelope appeared taped to my door. HOA letterhead again. I didn't even need to open it to know it wouldn't be good. When I did, I found exactly what I feared. A list of fines totaling $1,500. Aggressive behavior. Interfering with HOA duties. Creating a hostile environment. Violation of community peace standards. I read it 3 times, each time feeling my shock morph into a heavy, boiling frustration. I wanted to scream. I wanted to march straight to the HOA office and drop the security footage on their desk. I wanted every neighbor to see what actually happened. But I also knew how these boards worked. Linda had been president for years. She'd built alliances, favored certain families, held power over landscaping approvals, noise complaints, parking permits. People didn't cross her. Even now, she still had a grip on the board, even if she was currently sitting in a police station answering questions. It didn't matter that the truth was on my side. What mattered was perception, control, influence, and the board controlled all of that. The worst part wasn't the fines or the letter or the whispers. The worst part was a feeling of being cornered in my own neighborhood. Walking outside felt dangerous, not because anyone would hurt me, but because eyes followed me everywhere, full of assumptions. Late that afternoon, as I was taking out the trash, Mr. Thompson, the retired guy who lived 2 houses down, stopped on the sidewalk and crossed his arms. "I heard what you did," he said, not bothering to hide the accusation in his voice. "What exactly did you hear?" "So," I asked quietly, "that you threatened Linda, that you caused a big scene, that the cops had to be called to calm you down." I closed my eyes briefly, trying to keep calm. "That's not what happened." "That's not what the HOA said," he countered. Of course it wasn't. I wanted to explain. I wanted to tell him about the footage, the crowbar, the police confirming the car was mine. But I could see it in his eyes. He'd already decided what was true. Anything I said would sound like defensive excuses. "I hope things cool down," he muttered, walking away. By evening, my entire street felt different. Conversation stopped when I walked outside. Parents ushered their kids indoors. A woman who had once complimented my garden now stood with her arms folded tightly, like I was a threat. It was surreal, like watching your life twist into a bad rumor you couldn't control. I sat on my couch that night, staring at the crumpled fines in my lap, and felt something shift inside me. A hardening, a quiet resolve. They wanted me to roll over. They wanted me scared. They wanted me silent while they rewrote the truth. But I wasn't going to disappear into my house and let them run me over. No. If they wanted a fight, they were about to get one, but not in anger and not recklessly. I was going to win this the right way, with evidence, with clarity, and, most importantly, with the support of the people they'd pushed around long before they ever came after me. Because deep down, I could tell one thing. I wasn't the only one Linda had hurt. I was just the one who finally pushed back. The day after the fines were issued, I sat at my kitchen table with every piece of paper spread out in front of me. The HOA letter, the list of fines, printed screenshots of the security footage, the police incident report they'd emailed me that morning, even the photo I'd taken of the crowbar lying on my garage floor. Looking at all of it laid out made one thing painfully clear. If I didn't fight this, the HOA would bury me. Not just financially, but socially. They had already turned most of the neighborhood against me with one misleading flyer. I wasn't going to let them do it again. So instead of storming into their office, I did something quieter, smarter. I started talking to my neighbors. The first person I approached was Maria, the older woman who lived at the end of the cul-de-sac. I'd seen her gardening almost every morning, always polite, always keeping to herself. When she opened her door and saw me, she stiffened, like she wasn't sure if she should talk to me. "I'm not here to argue," I said gently. I want to tell my side of what happened." Her expression softened a little. She opened the door wider. "Come in." Her living room smelled like warm bread and cinnamon. I sat on her couch and showed her the footage. Her eyebrows shot up. When Linda pried open my door in the video, Maria put a hand over her mouth. "Oh my," she whispered. "She really did that." "Yeah," I said quietly, "and the HOA is trying to blame me." She sighed heavily, like a weight she'd carried for too long suddenly shifted. "You're not the first person she's caused trouble for," she said. "Just the first person she pushed far enough to get the police involved." That stopped me. "What do you mean?" I asked. Maria hesitated for a moment, then leaned in. 2 years ago, she fined me $300 because my grandson left his bike on the sidewalk for 10 minutes. 10 minutes. She came to my door and yelled so loudly the neighbors came out to watch. I wanted to protest, but she gave a small, defeated shrug. "You know how she is." I did know, now better than ever. From there, the truth came out piece by piece. Maria told me about the Millers, whose holiday decorations Linda called visual clutter. She'd made them take everything down on Christmas Eve. Then there was a Patel family who got written up because their visiting relative parked on the street for one night. And a young couple across the way, the Rodriguezes, who had been fined for their dog looking aggressive through their own fence. Everyone had a story. Everyone had been bruised by her authority. And for the first time since the incident, I didn't feel alone. I spent the next 2 days knocking on doors. Some people answered cautiously. Some barely cracked the door open. But once I explained what happened, and once they saw the video, something shifted in their faces. Shock, understanding, relief, even anger, not directed at me, but at what they had quietly endured for years. It felt like I was lighting matches throughout the neighborhood, and people who had been sitting in the dark were suddenly seeing clearly. By the third day, I wasn't the one knocking anymore. People started knocking on my door. Some brought their own stories. Some brought written complaints. Some just came to say they believed me. And then one neighbor, a guy named Brandon, who worked in IT, said something that sparked everything into motion. "Why don't we call a special community meeting?" Under HOA rules, if enough homeowners sign a petition, the board must meet with the community. Not in private, not behind closed doors. In public, where everyone could speak and every piece of evidence could be shown. So we drafted a petition. We knocked on more doors. We explained everything. People signed, more and more by the hour. Within 2 days, we had enough signatures to force the meeting. When I delivered a petition to the HOA board, the reaction was tense and immediate. 3 board members avoided eye contact. One tried to tell me the timing was inconvenient. Another insisted that Linda had done nothing wrong. But the signatures were legally binding. They couldn't wiggle out of it. They set the meeting for Saturday night in the community center. When I walked into that room, it was packed, standing room only. Neighbors who had avoided me days earlier now nodded or gave quiet smiles. Some looked nervous. Some looked determined. And at the front of the room, sitting stiffly with her hands clasped too tightly, was Linda. She looked smaller than usual, less confident, but her eyes still burned with that familiar indignation. The board tried to start the meeting with a bland statement about community cooperation, but people weren't having it. Voices rose. Questions fired off. And when they asked if anyone had evidence, I walked to the front, plugged in the USB drive, and hit play. The footage appeared on the projector screen. Linda entering my garage, crowbar in hand, forcing open the door, pacing in the dark. The room gasped. People whispered. Someone muttered, "I knew it." For once, Linda didn't have words. And for the first time since this nightmare started, I felt the balance shift. Not from anger or revenge, but from truth finally coming into the light. The silence in the room after the video ended felt heavier than the footage itself. People weren't whispering anymore. They were staring. Some with shock, some with anger, and some with that quiet, grim recognition of something they'd suspected for a long time but never had proof of. The board members shifted uncomfortably, exchanging tight, awkward glances. And in the middle of it all sat Linda, shoulders stiff, jaw clenched, eyes locked on the floor like she could burn a hole straight through it. One of the board members, Mr. Collins, the vice president, cleared his throat. "Well, this is certainly unexpected." A wave of frustration rolled through the crowd, but before anyone could erupt, I stepped closer to the front and faced the board. "There's nothing unexpected about it," I said. My voice was calm, but it carried farther than I thought it would. This isn't the first time she's abused her authority. It's just the first time someone caught it on camera. Someone in the back called out, "It's been years." Another voice added, "You fined us for everything." A woman stood up, fists trembling at her sides. "She made my son cry because he left chalk drawings on our driveway." The crowd swelled, voices overlapping, finally releasing everything they'd held inside for so long. Linda suddenly sprang to her feet. "You people have no idea what you're talking about. I've done nothing but enforce the rules that you all voted on." But her voice cracked. The certainty she usually carried, the smug confidence, was gone, replaced by panic. A man near the front held up the flyer from that morning. "This says he was the aggressor, that he caused a confrontation. But your own video proves you broke into his home." Linda's eyes darted around. I thought it was my car. The dealership must have made a mistake. Anyone could make that mistake." I stepped forward again, with a crowbar, at 2 in the morning, while calling 911 on me. She opened her mouth to respond, but nothing came out. The excuses had run dry. The board finally realized they couldn't hide behind policies or vague statements anymore. People wanted answers. They wanted accountability. Mr. Collins rubbed his temples and exhaled. "Linda," he said quietly, "this is a serious violation of state law, HOA bylaws, and basic homeowner rights. We can't ignore it." She spun toward him, eyes wide. "Are you turning on me too? After everything I've done for this community?" The words hung awkwardly in the air because everyone knew exactly what she'd done. Mr. Collins didn't look at her. "We need to vote. Now." The board huddled together at the front of the room. The crowd murmured anxiously, the tension thick enough to feel. I stood still, not breathing, trying to balance the anger, the exhaustion, the hope, all of it swirling at once. Finally, they returned. Mr. Collins stepped forward. His voice was steady. "By unanimous vote, Linda Harris is removed as HOA president effective immediately." For a moment, no one reacted. It was like the entire room froze, unsure if they heard correctly. Then the tension broke all at once. People clapped. Some sighed with relief. A few even cheered quietly under their breath, like they didn't quite believe the nightmare was really over. But Linda, she didn't cheer. She didn't speak. She just stood there, trembling, staring at the table like her entire world had been ripped out from underneath her. When she finally looked up, Her eyes found mine. And for a brief, strange moment, I didn't see anger. I saw something that almost looked like regret, or the closest she was capable of feeling. "You ruined everything," she whispered. I shook my head. "No. You did that when you decided the rules didn't apply to you." Security escorted her out of the room. No handcuffs, no shouting, just a quiet end to a reign that had gone on far too long. When the door closed behind her, it felt like the entire community exhaled as one. The rest of the meeting shifted into something hopeful. People spoke openly, some for the first time in years, about what they wanted the neighborhood to become. Fair rules, clear communication, respect instead of fear. It felt like a reset button had been pressed on all of us. Afterward, as people packed up their things and drifted out into the night air, neighbors approached me one by one. "Thank you for standing up. We should have spoken out sooner. You did what we were all too scared to do." Their words warmed something in me that had been cold and tense for weeks. Walking home under the streetlights, I felt lighter than I had in days. The night smelled like freshly cut grass and warm asphalt, simple things I hadn't noticed since all the chaos began. When I reached my driveway, I paused and looked at my garage door. No damaged locks, no crowbar, no flashing police lights. Just my home, quiet and safe again. The neighborhood wasn't perfect now. Nothing ever is. But people were talking again, supporting each other, standing together instead of shrinking away. And that was a lesson the whole ordeal had carved deep into all of us. Justice isn't just about punishing the person who did wrong. Sometimes it's about uniting the people who've been hurt. Sometimes it's about reminding a community that fear only wins when good people stay quiet. But when they finally speak up, everything changes.